Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I, 41 male, have 2 kids, 14 male and 16 female, with my ex, Tammy, 37 female. And according to the divorce decree, neither of us can take the kids out of state without prior written consent from the other. This was fine for the most part, as neither Tammy or I had any desire to go through any more hassle of co-parenting than we already do. However, my father recently passed away. It wasn't a shock because he was sick for a long time. So while I was sad he was gone, I was also relieved he wasn't suffering anymore. About 50 years ago, my father came to America, got an education, and made something of himself, but always missed his home country. When it was determined that there was nothing more that could be done for him, my father wanted to spend his last year in his home country. My sister happily obliged my father's wishes and quit her job to go with him and help with his care. My brother, other sister, and I would also take at least one trip over to see him. Then the holidays came around, and my father really wanted to see all of his grandchildren together one last time. My brother and other sister were able to bring their kids over, but when I brought this up to Tammy 3 months ago, she said she'd think about it. I gave her as much time as I could, but flights overseas during the holidays were expensive, so when I asked her again, Tammy said she needed more time. I asked how much more time did she need, and that led to a fight, and Tammy ended up saying she wouldn't agree. She also got to my kids and said that they didn't want to go either, citing that they didn't speak the language and how they shouldn't have to be inconvenienced just because their grandfather decided to leave the country. I was upset, but let it go, and I could tell that my dad was a little hurt that the kids didn't come. He tried to video chat with them twice, but got no response. We had one final dinner together, where my dad made a speech about how grateful he was for his family and discussed his will. Aside from my sister who took care of him, the majority of his financial estate would go to his grandkids, and he would be leaving the rest of us sentimental things, which we were all cool with. He passed a few weeks later, and at the reading of the will, my brother and other sister's kids got a decent-sized trust fund, where my kids weren't mentioned at all. I did bring this up once, and my sister said our dad was really hurt that he wasn't worth a video call in his final moments, and only opted to leave them sentimental items. When my kids found out, they were furious, and Tammy demanded that I sue my sister and/or my nieces and nephews, but I refused. My kids see this as me putting someone else before them, as well as punishing them for not agreeing to go. But I don't see it that way. Am I the a-hole? Well, I wanted to say that it's not the kids' fault that their mother didn't allow them to go or talk to their grandfather. But the kids are quite big already, and I would have to say in this situation, I'm sure they are using their phones already. So OP's sister is right, saying that it was hurtful that their dying father wasn't worth a video call. OP's children showed how much they cared for their grandfather. I hope OP's kids remember that they don't have their trust fund because their mother didn't want their father to take them to visit their dying grandfather, and that when asked themselves, they couldn't be asked to go anyway. And now let's see if the community agrees with me. Historian Over 3043 says, "Not the a-hole. Tammy screwed around and it cost your children their inheritance. Your dad had the right to do what he wanted with his money. I doubt even if you took your siblings to court, you would win. This is all on Tammy and your kids for the decisions they made." Roxy Walker says, "Not the a-hole. Tammy insisted that you not take the children out of the country, but now she wants you to sue your own family for inheritance money? It's obvious that you may or may not have had a different outcome should the kids have visited. Your siblings did most of the heavy lifting, so they would have automatically been seen with higher regard. However, her insistence on not allowing them to go and speaking on their behalf is where you should remind the kids and Tammy was her doing. At the end of the day, you probably don't want to hire a lawyer because you know you probably could have done more to have your children visit or even FaceTime with your dad. But again, doing so might not have guaranteed any different outcome, especially if he was influenced by your family towards the end of his life to revise or modify his last wishes." Tiny D71 says, "It sounds like it was important to your father to be surrounded by the people he cared about and who cared about him. Yes, your kids are too young to have enacted the decision to travel to see him against the parents' wishes. But as you note, They showed little interest in going, or even connecting with your dad by video chat. Your kids' views on this lack of inheritance sound like they come from your mother, just like their lack of desire to take the trip did. They're old enough for you to have a conversation with them too. You lost a parent, and it isn't the time to be fighting about money that you don't care about. Not the a-hole. My husband, 65, and I, 60, live in Spain. Our daughter, 25, and her long-term boyfriend, 26, come to visit us once or twice a year. Our house is split into 2 apartments, so they get their own space when staying, with the understanding we might need to pop in to grab stuff from the pantry, kitchen, etc. We strongly encourage them to do stuff in the local area, like go to the beach when visiting, so they're not just hanging out in the lounge with us, as they come for a week at a time. On one of those days, they'd gone for a walk in the village, and I needed some bedding from the wardrobe in their room. Well, when I went in, I was shocked. They hadn't unpacked their suitcase properly and had a pile of clothes on the chair next to the desk. Some of their things were hanging in the wardrobe, but not all. There was a pile of dirty washing under the chair and shoes scattered on the floor, which is risky here, as we can get scorpions. They each had a glass of water that had been partially drunk on the bedside table, and the bed wasn't made properly. When I went into the kitchen, they'd left all the dishes they'd used at breakfast on the draining rack, and there was a half-a-drunk bottle of cola on the side. The bathroom was no better. Wet towels bunched up on the drying radiator, and wet swimwear hanging in the shower. When they got back, my husband and I sat them down and told them how rude and how disrespectful they'd been to our house and us as hosts. We made them unpack fully and get rid of the mess, but not before they took everything off the floor and vacuumed the carpet in the bedroom, dried and put away the dishes in the kitchen, and tidied up the bathroom. The rest of their stay seemed to go okay. But now my daughter's been home over a week and has not called. I think she might be mad, and the only thing I can think of is this. So, was I the a-hole? Yikes! They are both adults, and everything OP mentioned didn't seem out of the ordinary. It's how many people live when they're on holiday. It is supposed to be their living space while visiting OP. As long as they clean up before they leave, then OP shouldn't have a problem with it. Well, I think it's not going to be messy again, because they are not coming back. Raiku Topaz says, "You're the a-hole. When you give guests a private space, that space is there for as long as they are your guests. Nothing that you saw was harmful to you or to the house. I actually do live in Spain, and I've never heard of scorpions being a risk. Your only reasonable expectation is that the place be tidied up before they left, and you don't indicate that in previous visits they leave a mess. If it bothered you that much to see it, then your solution was to send your husband in for the bedding, or ask them to bring it to you later." Legally Myself says, "You're the a-hole. There's no evidence that they were going to leave things that way or leave a mess when they left. You seem to want to control them and punish them. You intruded on what should have been their private space, and then had the audacity to scold your adult daughter and treat her like a child. How is them not unpacking their suitcase fully harmful to you or anything else? Making the bed properly? Oh, for crying out loud. That hurt you how? Wet swimwear hanging in the shower? So, again, the harm. You owe them an apology." Glass Ear says, "You're the a-hole and incredibly controlling. None of the things you describe are going to damage your property. I can see if they left it like that before they left permanently, but come on. You embarrassed your daughter in front of her boyfriend. I bet this will be their last visit." I, 42 female, have 3 teens, 16 female, 16 male, twins, and 14 female daughter. My eldest daughter came home yesterday and was upset because she received a text message from my ex-partner, 57 male, to send their half-sister money for something. My daughter was so upset and asked me why her father asked her all the time for money. I was pissed. For context, I split from my ex several years ago because he brought us to the brink of financial ruin. I owned a property, and he put our family in a perilous situation where I sold my house last year to get out of our common-law relationship. I started over and lived somewhere else because I realized he did things for the benefit of himself and not for our family. He also uses women to get what he wants. It's a long tale, but we shall focus on the fact at hand. I instructed my daughter to not send the money. I told her if there was a problem to let me know. An hour later, my ex called our children to speak with them about their school day. I observed my daughter's body language as she sat uncomfortably on our couch while she and her siblings spoke to their father related to school events for the following week. At this time, I maintained my composure to wait for him to say anything else, and of course he did. At the end of the conversation, he requested my daughter to send his request. He said it cryptically, but what he didn't count on was that I was listening. After my daughter hung up her phone, she received a barrage of texts from her father to send the money to him for his affair child, who was 17 female. I asked my daughter to find out why this child needed money. She has 3 parents, including my ex. Why does she need this money from my daughter? The response from ex: to pay for a manicure for the affair child and to bond with her sister. Folks, I lost it. I think my children have only heard me curse a few times in their life, but I was pissed. My children just met the affair child last summer, whom they never knew about. They've met her 4 times so far and feel weird about her, which is understandable because what the hell? My daughter was so stressed, and I informed her that I will send a message to her father regarding the money. Don't worry. I send the texts. I went in on my ex and informed him under no circumstances will our children ever give money to the affair child moving forward. Our children are children. He's the parent of this child. He's responsible for her. I called him a lowlife using our daughter to fund this child, who I've been informed is spoiled by her other parents. He countered that I blew up our family because I was selfish. No, dear. I left you because you put us in $90,000 worth of debt that I didn't know of before the bank almost came to repossess our former house. His response was wanting the kids to bond to the affair child as his goal. Here's where I feel I'm the a-hole for denying the request for money, because I'm responsible for this affair child's existence. Should I have left this matter alone? Wow, Opie's ex is such a loser. He doesn't even have any money to pay for a manicure for 2 girls. If he wants them to bond, then he should pay for it. End of story. Additional Jaguar 76 says, not the a-hole. The only thing I want to mention, though, is to work harder at removing your daughter from the manipulation, instead of having her do the digging to find out more information. She needs to be as far removed from all of this as possible. Your ex picked the one daughter for a reason. He's honed in on his ability to manipulate her successfully. You need to have a talk with her about red flags, etc. He also spoke to her in code for some reason. No man should be asking his teen daughter for money, ever, let alone to give it to another child. This man has successfully used everyone around him and has a system. Do everything you can to teach your daughters how to spot red flags and not be his victim. Medical Potato says, not the a-hole. How the hell are you responsible for the affair child? Did you stick a gun to his head and force him to get his affair partner pregnant? I doubt it. You need to document this and discuss this with your lawyer. Your daughter should not be forced or manipulated into giving money to the other child. Original Genghis Mom says, not the a-hole, but you really do need to teach your kids, especially your older daughter, how to make smart financial decisions and how to shine up their spines and deny their father's ridiculous demands. I'm a mother of 2 high schoolers, and I recently came down with something. I was totally bedridden for a week, could barely get up to use the restroom. My husband was good about bringing me food and meds, but when I realized he was only bringing me takeout, I mentioned to him that I really needed his help keeping the home tidy with our kids. I could tell he was running out of dishes. He promised me that he was taking care of the home, and I stressed once again that I really could not handle getting well and immediately walking into a mess where I'm expected to clean up. He promised again, but lo and behold, he did nothing to keep the house tidy. I could tell that my kids did their best with what they could, but it was still disgusting. I'm talking about dirty takeout containers left out for a week, laundry unwashed, trash left to the side of the can, just an overall mess. My husband argued that the cleaning was usually my job, so he didn't think it was a big deal to leave it to me. I told him I needed him while I was sick and that he was treating me like a maid. We went back and forth, and I got so mad that I booked a couple of nights at a local hotel and went out for a spa-cation until he cleaned up his own mess. The issue at hand was that this coincided with the boys' trip he had planned. Our kids are old enough to drive themselves around and still have their allowance, so they were fine. But there were a few after-school activities that required mandatory parental supervision, meaning that my husband had to go. He tried to guilt me into going, but I told him that he was a parent too, and that if he wanted me to come home, the house better be sparkling. Of course, his friends started asking why he had to drop out of the trip, and some of the wives called to ask if I was okay. I was pretty honest with my answer. Apparently, my husband was too, but unfortunately for him, he had expected his friends to back him up. Instead, everyone kind of laid into him, and now he's blaming me for making him look bad to his friends. My mom says that I should have just handled this privately at home, and my husband agrees. Both of them are calling me an a-hole for airing out my dirty laundry, but I believe that my husband did this to himself. A mutual friend told me that my husband was pissed to the point where he was considering a separation though, so I'm starting to wonder if I'm an a-hole. Jeepers Creepers 74 says, "Not the a-hole. He wasn't treating you like a maid. Maids get paid. He was treating you like his mom, someone who is required by virtue of relation alone to clean up his messes. Well, guess what? Moms dole out punishments sometimes, and you were right to ground this child. You have nothing to worry about with the separation. This man could not survive on his own for more than a week." One More Knife to the Heart says, "Not the a-hole, not the a-hole, not the a-hole. Please do not let your chauvinistic husband and old-fashioned mom of yours guilt you for standing up for yourself. You were sick for over a week. Reminded him to please at least try to keep things tidy. Instead, he acted like a teenager himself while his parents were gone. But his attitude here. My husband argued that the cleaning was usually my job, so he didn't think that it was a big deal to leave it to me. What the duck? Even after reassuring you that he had it under control and was keeping things up while you were ill, he tells you it was your job, so he left it for you, even though you didn't make any of the mess, and he couldn't manage to even take out the freaking garbage?" Snoopet says, "Exactly how would you have handled it privately when he was digging in on his version of reality where apparently you are the designated house slave and he gets to do whatever he wants? All you did was tell the truth about what happened. I'm not big on airing dirty laundry, but this is different. You weren't going to get him to see your side because he doesn't respect your opinions. His peers, on the other hand, well-placed shaming. Not the a-hole, and the separation? Tell him he doesn't have to threaten you with a good time more than once."